All right, welcome brand builders. Today we have a special guest, Mike Doyle, joining us to talk about all things podcasting for business. So Mike is the owner of Drive 80 Studios, and he helps businesses explain what they do in 60 to 90 seconds with animation. We at Photo5 also had the pleasure of working with Mike over the years, and getting to see his growth has been amazing. He is also the publisher and creator of a daily web comic called Daily Bread, which can be found on Instagram at Your Daily Bread. And as if he doesn't have all the things going on, he also creates a podcast about the late 90s punk scene called This Was the Scene. So welcome, Mike. Appreciate you joining us today. So we've worked together for a few years now, and like I said, excited to see the growth of a lot of the things that you've done. And we started the conversation about podcasting a few weeks ago, and something new that we started here at Photify as well. So curious to sit down with you and learn more about your background and why you started and how you got into podcasting.
Yeah, definitely. So where do you want me to start?
Start with how you got into podcasting.
So as you said in the beginning, I own Drive 80 Studios, which is an animation company. And this last week, I think it was for last Friday, I just hit 11 years doing this. And you kind of find out through the years, how do you market? And anytime I like creating things, but I'm also pretty savvy-ish when it comes to technology. Mm-hmm. And so as the years progress, there's always something new that comes up. Like one thing with my webcomic, I love Instagram stories because I realized it was, 24 hours and it deletes. So I find little things out there that work to my favor. I'm like, all right, cool. I don't want to have something that's up too long. So Instagram stories is great. Oh, I can do stickers. Yeah. Now I can upload them. Podcasting came about because I found that a lot of my clients didn't know what to do with the video after I gave it to them. And it was really frustrating. Mm-hmm. And the constant thing was, what do I do with this thing? So I started a podcast in 2017. I think it was 2017. And I started interviewing my friends who knew how to market with video. And I thought I could use it in two ways. Was one, I can educate people. And I kept it to about 30 minutes. So I was like, well, introduce who they were, talk about one success thing that they did with a video, and then kept it to like a very small section, and then capped it off with, plug yourself. And so I found that it was giving them a spotlight. And so then I would be opened up to their audience, because typically when it's a brand new podcast, unless it's very specific, not a lot of people are really it's like, you have to find out why they're going to share it. And I thought if they share it and 10 people listen to it, one of those 10 people could be a marketing director of a big company and they have a budget, and that's all I really need. So it was a mixture of basically utilizing as a tool to connect with marketing companies so they knew that I existed, giving them value by interviewing them, and then having them share it, which would put me out in front of more people. So I did that for about 20 episodes, and I hated it at the end because it was just so boring. It was just like, I mean, like, I like creating things, and it was just, I don't want to talk about this crap. And, I don't know if I could swear or anything. I don't know crap swearing, but like, I was like, I don't want to talk about this. And so that led to knowing how to do a podcast, which we can jump in, which we'll eventually get into with the one that I do now for This Was the Scene, mm-hmm. which is doing very well. It's a lot of fun. And it's really, that one is pure. It was just really done on a whim, which is so funny because I think the most, I don't say successful, but the things that work for people are just accidental. And so the fact that I did 20 episodes, I knew how to set up an interview, how to record it, what I was going to use to record it, how to edit it, because I know how to use editing equipment anyway through Adobe software, where to launch it. There's so many minute things that go into it. I had all that knowledge, and all I needed to do was just plug in a new topic, and it was ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think I commend you for recognizing that you're like, all right, I like this. Here's an opportunity for me to educate and use this, I guess, more organic tool to educate your clients.
Yeah.
But also commend you for recognizing like, all right, I have fun doing this, but I want to change the format and the topics that I talk about. and you kind of went full force into that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't work for myself to hate it, right?
Right,
And
right.
so like the marketing thing, it was cool and it connected me with new people and I made connections. It didn't work out the way that I wanted to, but the thing that worked was how to do it. So I always think that if you go down a certain path, there's something there that is the reason why you're doing it. And I think the reason why I was doing it was to learn that knowledge, to then take it over to the two new podcasts that I do. Well, they're not new, they're like 4 years old, but the ones I like doing.
Sure, sure. Well, and the topic that we're focusing on here too is like how to match your brand voice to your marketing and sales. And I think when I think about you, Mike Doyle, as Drive 80 and all the different things that you're a part of, Daily Bread, I feel like when you created this next podcast, this was the scene. I think that speaks more to your personality and the things that you enjoy, and then it encompasses a lot of the other work that you do. But do you find that you are still able to kind of market what you do through Drive 80 and Daily Bread through this was a scene?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that people have an issue with a podcast is how do you monetize it? And
Yeah.
it's a long game, but you have to figure out there's little hidden like nooks and crannies in how you do it. So I turned it into, there's no connection between the podcast and Drive. I mean, the gap is so gigantic. The only connection is me in the middle, right?
Yeah.
But the cool thing is that when I post a new episode, I can post it on LinkedIn. So it's like these little tiny things that happen where a couple weeks ago, I posted this one episode, this guy, Max Bemis, with this band called Say Anything. And a lot of people knew who that band is. And he's like, Say Anything was a huge, not influencing me because I was done playing music that time. Well, I mean, I was playing music, I was on my first band, but I love music so much and I loved his band and he's huge. So that was big. And when I posted on LinkedIn, I think it was that one, someone commented like, oh my God, Say Anything. And now they recognize me. Oh, now they like know who I am because it happened to be in their LinkedIn feed. Yeah. And it wasn't, hey, Mike Doyle animating things. It was, oh my God, Max Bemis, how are you doing this? And then, so it opens me up to that world, right? And so there's the benefit for me. Another thing is that I do have sponsors that pay me a little bit of money to mention them in the intro. Yeah. But I also use an opportunity for myself to, in the beginning, say, hey, real quick, go check out my animation company, drive80.com, like, blah, blah. Yeah. That actually led to getting a client because someone emailed me, and I've had the podcast, that podcast has been around for 4 years. March 22nd is when it launched in 2018. Okay. And in that time, I've made money on a Patreon. I sell merch because I know how to design and upload and then use Printful that prints on demand. So I know all the ways that I can be very like scrappy and save a lot of money. Yeah. But by mentioning that, I got an email about, it was like last August. And this company said, hey, we just happened to say out loud, we need an explainer video. And this guy, Cody, who works here goes, oh yeah, there's this guy who does this punk podcast that I listen to every Friday. He does that. They ended up hiring me and I did their animation. And so it's like, that's another way you can make money. So you can't just think, you got to think about like, if you are doing two things, how do you connect the two? Yeah. And for me, it was, how am I going to get Drive 80 in this? Well, I could do that. And on Instagram, my Instagram page is growing. So I'll sometimes in my stories, I'll utilize it where I'll say like, here's the next episode this week, and I'll do a teaser. It's animated. So I use my skill for that. And then I took one episode and I animated about 2 minutes of it into like an explainer funny thing, just based on the stories they were doing. So I just look at something and go, oh, that would be cool. And then when I upload it, I'll say, this is made by me. Oh, I have an animation company. Or in my stories, I'll say, hey, this is an ad. I do animation. But then the rest of it, 95% of it, it's about the punk rock scene. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, here's about me. And then the rest of it about someone else. So it's like you utilize those little things to say like, hey, I'm doing this for free, basically. I don't give a crap. Right. Here we go. You
enjoy it. I enjoy talking about this topic.
Yeah. And I need to get something financially. I mean, I don't want to, like, there's an opportunity to get something financial for me.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And there's no guarantee, but it's like, hey, there's eyes here. So who knows?
But that's also, I think, the cool thing about, when you think about organic marketing, it's like, I don't even think you'd call that organic marketing because you found the opportunity to tie in what you do in your other businesses with your passion project. But the real cool thing is that you're connecting with audiences based on a passion, and then they're remembering you because, oh, well, I could actually use this guy. I liked him. I liked his vibe. I want to work with this guy, and we need an animation video.
Yeah. And
And
it's
I
also, and it's like, you're right too, because I try to put my voice as much as possible and exactly who I am into all the things that I do, because I don't
right.
like, because I think on LinkedIn, I just see so many people just be like a robot. And I know, and I've been out to drinks with people and I'm like, you're so much cooler when you talk like you. And I would
Yeah.
work with you if I listened to you talk. And, it's like people go out and they meet with clients and they're like, let's go get beers or bourbons or something. Like it's in a casual setting and you want to know someone and humanize them.
Right.
And so I like to do that with Drive 80. And then with This Was the Scene, it's purely just me being myself. And I'm also geeking out on something I'm really passionate about. So you're right. They are hearing exactly who I am. And then they might say, well, at least if we have something to talk about initially, because a phone call could be like, I like Say Anything as well. So, I mean, that's a great way to start a sales call. Or they're like, yeah, I really like how you interview people, or you just like, you sound like you don't care. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care. Like, I'll
You
ask
keep it
whatever I
real.
want. Yeah.
You keep
Keep
it
it
real.
real.
Yeah. But I
100%.
feel like that's what we're so trying to nail down right now is just like people don't want to be sold to. Like I can't tell you how many times a day and a week that I get a new LinkedIn request. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, what does this person do? And then instantly it's like, hey, do you want to download my sales lead tool? Or can I get on the phone or do XYZ? And I'm like, oh, I just want to like, who are you as a human before you
Yeah.
sell me something?
Well, your meme you had up the other day, it was yours, right? It was like a bathroom with
Oh, the bathroom
stalls.
stalls.
And the thing I
I
liked
can't.
about that, what I loved about it is it showed to me it was exactly how it feels. But it showed that you have a sense of humor. But I already know you.
Yeah.
But if I didn't, I'd be like, she's got a cool personality because she's not being so corporate on LinkedIn because everyone's so afraid to not be that way. So once you break outside of that and have your own voice where you're like, this is funny, but this is how I feel. I mean, it was like the
Yeah.
perfect thing to kind of introduce your own voice without you getting on camera and say like, hey, I'm Angel. This is like what I sound
Yeah.
like. It was, oh, wow, she gets a good joke. But it's business related. So that's what I love about LinkedIn. If you
Yeah.
just do anything on there and have a business edge, anything, it's perfect.
Well, my God, I mean, we went through the last 2 years of our life where we've like integrated business into our lives. Like, quite, I mean, here I am in my house right now. You're sitting in, your living room. Like,
Yeah.
business and life has merged. And I feel as though it's almost like, I don't know who we're trying to fool by not just being like, I'm a human and I do business.
Yeah.
This is who I am,
Yeah. Yeah. No one
Uh,
goes to bed in a suit, like
No, not that I mean, that's got to be uncomfortable, but no,
probably
you're
like one
exactly
person.
right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Somebody like, who
Some,
knows? I mean, it
some
could save you
psycho.
time in the morning, not having to get ready. Who knows? Anyways, but no, I appreciate that. I think that's, exactly the intention of it, with tools like LinkedIn, but it's sometimes hard putting yourself out there, even with creating podcasts like this, where like, yeah, I could be a robot. I could read through the script and just go off that and let's get on to the next thing. But does that really show the human connection or personality if that's how every one of these is going to look?
Well, people can
So,
smell it too. People can smell
oh,
BS. It's like
yeah,
cheap cologne, it's like you can catch someone's real voice if someone is, hey ho oh radio show blah blah blah, and you're like, come on man, you don't talk like that in real person. If you did, I wouldn't want to hang out with you because you would annoy the hell out of me for like 2 minutes in.
that'd
um
be intense.
yeah, like a friend of mine, she has a podcast. It's let's go on a food adventure, and I was listening to her first episodes and I was just like, you're so the I'm like, I'm like, you got to talk like you, because I've
Right.
been best friends with her for 20 years. Like, you need the Beth voice because that's great, and you're
That's what
really
people fall in love with. Yeah.
exactly like they like, yeah, they don't like you nailed it. You don't want to be sold to. You're being sold to when someone's making up a persona just because they think it's what people want. Once you
Yeah.
find where your voice really fits in and the thing you're selling, and your like casual. I mean, casual works for me, but if it's not real effort, I think that attracts more people your way.
Right.
And if you have a passion behind it and you're smart, I mean, you have to be smart about it. And you also got to make deadlines. You can't just be so lackadaisical, but your personality can. But when you're in the work, like you got to kick ass, which is what I also bring to the table with the animation
and that's
stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the art of it. That's the craft of it is, combining your personality with, how you put yourself out there in business. Because it takes a lot to be, especially in this day and age with social media and the amount of consumption, the amount of channels that we have, to put yourself out there, to be vulnerable, and to be real. And I mean, it's tough. Like especially recently, just kind of got to this point where I'm like, why not? Why not at least show the more human element of things that are going on in my life and how they relate to business? And, oddly enough, and not oddly enough, and not surprisingly, the response has been great. And I think it's just, we need more of that. So I think podcasting.
I'm sorry, go on.
No, do it.
I think like I lucked out because I think through the things I've done through the years, it made me just like starting off in a punk band when I was 17 years old. I got to be in front of people, and then you're writing songs that are very vulnerable. You're singing in front of people, which is very vulnerable. Like you're opening yourself up. So I think because I had that as a young age, it was also very, well, I'm in a punk band, so I'm going to like go against the system and work for myself, which I stayed true to, and still hold those like ethics to this day. But I have always been, I'm not going to do something or work somewhere or do anything if I'm in any way not putting my own voice behind it. And and it's not like I'm sitting here being like, oh, go me, pat on the back. I just decided that. And it's not like it was just always easy. When I started my company, I was in a chamber of commerce, and person running it said to me, she's like, look, I know like you had this like manifesto thing. And she's like, you really should take the S word out, because it's not really like good for corporate. And I listened to her, and I'm like, why would I do that? And so from that point on, I was like, I'm not going to change again. And I'm not going to be rebellious and be just like an idiot, but I'm going to do this thing and work for myself. I'm going to do it my way and try as many things as possible to make it like where I want to wake up and do this.
The other thing that comes to mind for me with that is that at the same time, the people that, if you drop the S-bomb in a ad or you do whatever, like the people that you want to work with are the ones that are going to be attracted to it. And the people that aren't might not be people you want to work with. Yep. And that's okay either way. That's okay either way. There's something for everybody. There's something for everybody. But I think regardless, we just got to be true to ourselves. And I mean, I think that's what's going to come out in the passion that we have for our work too, is people will see it and feel it when we're being real about it.
Yeah.
And you've got, so we're on StreamYard right now, which is more of like the video. I don't know. Do we call it video casting? There's podcasting. How do we call?
I think it's video casting. I mean, vlogging is more personal. It's like a video vlog. I think this is video casting. I mean, I still call my phone a cell phone. I don't even know that's accurate anymore. I'm like, I'm
not out here calling it mobile. I'm not calling it mobile.
Or you're like your iPhone. Can I call your iPhone your droid? It's like, no, it's a cell phone. Emoji.
It's a cell phone. Yeah. Well, yeah, because I'm just like, I guess it's not podcasting because it's video. Who knows? It works for us. I've been loving StreamYard. It's just anything where you can streamline the process of getting your content out to multiple channels. I am all here for, and optimizing within each. So I've been happy with this, but leading into what are some of the ways that you measure success with the podcasts that you've done, whether it is for, when you were doing more marketing podcasts, or even with This Was the Scene? I mean, you mentioned you got a client out of one of them.
Yeah. With the first podcast, the success was if I got a gig out of it, which didn't work, but it got me connections. So that was success. And I mean, so now there's always a long game in sales. The sales cycle is either to like right away, it's super quick, a couple weeks, a couple months, or there's years. I had someone reach out to me recently that they took them. I mean, I think I started talking to them 5 years ago, and they finally said like, yeah. Yes. So there's that aspect where the first podcast potentially could make that happen. With this was the scene. It was purely just, I always wanted to document the Jersey punk scene in the late 90s. That's what I grew up in and played in. And my band had like local success, and we toured the country like a bunch of times. And yeah, it was like, it was a lot of fun, and people, you know,
kind of a big deal.
Yeah. It was like, it was, you know, I mean, it got me connections with bands that are still touring. Like Newfound Glory just played in Raleigh with Less Than Jake. And I interviewed both of them because I knew Ian from Newfound Glory, because our bands played together 20 years ago in Compton, in this place called Fado Dough. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I reached out to him.
That is a big deal. Yeah.
I mean, so that's like, that to me, that's been the success for that podcast, was the beginning, the first 30 episodes where this is instead of documenting and paying a lot of money to do a video thing, I was like, I'm always, what can I, and it's, anyone asks me business advice, I go, what can you do today that makes it happen? And I was like, well, I know how to podcast because of the Drive 80 things. That's where it all came back around. And I was in a Facebook group that my buddy had started that was just about all of us from Jersey in the late 90s scene. So it's, I mean, talk about niche down. You got music, you got punk rock, you got late 90s punk rock, and then you got New Jersey punk rock. And you can't get any more niche than that, unless it was just like Wayne, New Jersey punk rock. You know, it's
right.
It's so specific. So when I reached out in the group and said, I think I'm gonna do this podcast about the scene, what do you think? Who would listen to it? And I got a lot of likes. So I was like, okay, on the business sense, there's validation. If I was asking to pay for it, that's different, because everyone goes, oh, take my money. And when you send them a PayPal link, you get crickets. But when it's free, I was like, okay,
you can't,
this is going to work. And I know how to upload it. So I made a list of the 20 people I wanted to talk to. And then I started messaging them through Instagram. I was like, hey, I'm doing this thing. You want to talk? Like, sure. So then I was like, well, technically I'm using Skype. You got to download it, because I have an audio recorder called Call Recorder. And just call in. I'm going to talk to you for an hour. And it's always a lie, because it's always like hour and a half, 2 hours. I mean, they're so long. And I knew how to edit it afterwards. I knew how to use Lips. Because then you want to talk about technical stuff, and I could break this down a little bit more after this, after this part of it. But, you know, Libsyn to upload it, and that shoots it to everywhere. And then I just like got the first episode, and I was like, oh, I could do teasers, because I wanted to animate. So I did teasers. It was a clip of what someone talked about. And I did that for the first 30 episodes. And it just, like, the first episode, I think, got like 150 downloads like that day. And then every Friday after that. And so I was like, okay, it's going to be on a Friday. I'm going to launch it at midnight going into that Friday, because I found out that if you launch a Libsyn, it could take an hour to show up on all the platforms. So I was like, I would edit it the weekend before, because I had to get it before my week of working. So I'd go on a Saturday, I was going to Brew when they had Gateway. And I would sit there and edit. And then I made all the graphics and all the teasers. And then Monday I had an Instagram. So I'd upload the teaser for the week, and I'd tag the person. So that means that they'd share it. So there's like more of the method to the madness. And then I did another teaser on Thursday. And then on Friday, when I launched it, I would use Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I made a Facebook page. I had the Facebook group. That was really the thing that launched it. And once I did those 30 episodes, I mean, the success was that people were listening to it. That's all I really wanted.
Yeah.
Then it became, let me talk to the bands and record labels and producers that influenced us. So then I started reaching out to people. Now, the best thing about this is that I wasn't selling them on buy something. I'm going to share your story. This is pure value for you.
Correct.
And they're like, yeah. So that the success has been, I mean, I have talked to heroes of mine from when I was 18 years old, and really micro success is that there's these super stupid stories that I've always wanted to know from like 17-year-old me. And I'm in the middle of interviewing these people. I'm like William Goldsmith, he was the drummer for the Foo Fighters. He was the guy who got kicked out.
Yeah.
His first band was Sunny Day Real Estate. Sunny Day Real Estate is one of my like all-time favorite bands. Like I have a tattoo on my back of their third record when they came out. And the fourth album that came out, there's this clip, and he was the 100th episode. It just happened to work that way, which to me was so amazing. It's like the 100th episode, my favorite band. It was like the stars aligned. It was so crazy. And he was like the nicest dude. And I'm like asking him all these questions, and people were like, I can't believe you got that out of him. Like, that's crazy. And I go, there's this record, there's this sound clip in Rising Tide, which is the 4th album. I go, there's this woman talking. I'm like, I've always wanted to know who that was. And he goes, oh, it's like, that was my sister. And there's this huge story about when he was younger, his sister, I think she's a little bit older, she like died tragically somehow. Like she fell or something crazy. And he did an interview one time where he's like, I just wanted to hit my drum so hard that would like crack the earth and bring her back. And I was like, oh my God, that's so powerful.
Yeah.
So I said that to him, and I was just like, that's because he's like, she would go overseas and she would record just what she was doing with a tape recorder. This was like in the 70s or something, or 80s. And that's her talking. And I was just like, cool. I thought it was some sound clip, but just that little thing right there to me was a win.
Yeah.
And so those little things have just happened with all of these interviews. Or I just did one yesterday, and I was talking to someone, and this is like a band, this hardcore band called Strife I used to like back in the day. And I asked him this one question that I always wanted to know. So that's been good. And then this financially, I don't know. I have a Patreon. I just put like $1 a month just because you listen. I make like $75 a month on it. And the amount of time it takes. Yeah, I mean, it's cool. And I think, if you're really big in the universe and manifesting and all that, law of attraction, which I'm guessing you probably are. Yeah. It's like when the universe sends you any kind of money, you have to be like, that's awesome.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, so it kind of opens the door to like, you can get really woo about it, but if you have it, it's like you're receiving and you're grateful for it, then it's like more things kind of come. And it really has happened that way. And it kind of transpires to like my business and stuff like that. So that's really kind of successes.
Well, and it's also a form of validation. I mean, there's people that are obviously listening, they're enjoying this. And even though it's a niche, a very strong niche, like it's elevated. And I love hearing the ecosystem that you've created to amplify it as well. And I just went and saw your Instagram page too here. And I think the other thing with podcasting that you somewhat mentioned is why not these people come on and chat with you? You know what I mean? Like it's free promotion for them. Yeah. You're not charging them to come onto the show, but you're being able to create a platform where there's these little nuggets that you can share, and they're sharing their story, and vice versa. Like you're slowly starting to build your business, find more opportunities through it. And you're also talking to some really, really cool musicians, which I think when I messaged you on LinkedIn and I was like, oh, I didn't know you had this podcast. You're like, oh yeah, it's this is one about Say Anything. And I was just like, wait, you actually interviewed him from the band? Like,
see, like I don't know who knows who Maxime is. Like, Say Anything is pretty well known, but when like you said, you're like, oh my God, I know that band. Like I know Is a Real Boy in those records.
Yeah.
That was actually, I know like there's very limited time, but it was a really cool story there was that I got to tell him that when I was married back in the day, and I was like, we're divorced now, but I'm like, it's not your fault because of your song. I go, but our wedding, our dance song was his song Cemetery, which it's about him and his wife, who is the singer of this band Isley. And then our last dance was his wife's, his wife's band song. I was like, so you opened and closed the wedding. I go, granted, we got divorced later on. And I was like, but it was just cool to tell him that, being like, this is something I wanted to tell you. And he was like, that's so cool. And I was like, it's crazy.
If he can think about that now, like someone played my music at their wedding.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Like him and his wife's songs.
And his wife. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
I love it. I love it. Well, to close things up, I could talk to you forever. We could go on 17 different podcasts, but you mentioned a little bit on some tech and maybe some equipment that you would recommend. You care sharing more about that?
Yeah. So I like to give more of advice about starting. That's kind of my thing, is just because I like people to get off their butt and do it. So for me personally, the technical things that I use is like right now I'm on a MacBook Pro. So this is what I utilize. This is my system. I have a headset, which I'm not wearing right now because I didn't really want to wear this tight headset. But this is a Jabra. I got it on Amazon. I think it was $65, and I've had it now for five years. Negative part about a headset is that when you move, you can hear it creak in the mic. So when you're editing, you can hear that. So luckily, when I record through Skype is what I use. There's call recorder. Now, the only problem is the new Mac update doesn't work with call recorder. So I still have my old Mac, which I haven't updated. So I still use that for interviewing. So the newer ones, I'm looking for potentially a new way to do that. Biggest thing you want is something that's going to separate the tracks, because the edit comes in where your guest says, like, so,
Yeah.
and I try to be very aware, even in interviews like this, where I'll pause and I'll think about what I'm going to say. So I'm not, the listener isn't hearing me go like, which I'm sure I probably did. When you're editing, I use Adobe Premiere because I know how to edit. I know to do video editing in Adobe Premiere.
Yeah.
And you could use Audacity, which I think is free. And then there's Audition, which is Adobe. So Adobe is $50 a month for the full suite.
Okay.
Which to me is a benefit to me because I also use Photoshop and Illustrator. I use it for my whole business.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I use Photoshop.
I think it's really economical.
It really is inexpensive. Those things used to cost like $5,000 for for the suite of that year. But I think you can do like $20 a month as well.
Okay.
And at the same time, it's, if you're going to do this, you should invest in something that's really not that bad. But I use Premiere and I'll put the 2 tracks in. Now the time comes because I am cutting out those likes and sums and those pauses. So It'll take me an hour and a half to record a podcast, but then it'll probably take me 3 to 4 hours to edit.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because in this one, this is just launching as is. You're not going to cut out and edit it, right? Right. On mine, I have the time to do it and I just have the audio. So I do that. And then I upload it to Libsyn. Libsyn, I pay, in the beginning, you could pay $5 a month. And I think you're limited to a very small amount of megabytes and you don't get the statistics dashboard. But when you upload it there, it launches it to everywhere. Now, the thing when you're first setting it up is you have to set it up in Google Play, or not Google Play anymore, but it's Google, whatever their platform is for podcasts, Apple, YouTube, if you have to start a YouTube channel. So there's all these little tiny things that it'll walk you through. And if you go to Libsyn, if you Google Libsyn Apple podcast, it'll tell you how to set that up. But it is kind of a pain in the ass. And then, so for the graphics, I use Photoshop and I have a template that's 1080 by 1080. And that's the one that's going to be the square graphic that's going to go on Instagram. Yep. And then I have the 1920 by 1080 graphic that's going to go up. It's going to upload to YouTube. It's going to be on LinkedIn. It's going to be on the landing page. It took me, I have a website that I did because I figured I wasn't sure if podcasts were SEO friendly. So I thought that having a website worked well because of keywords of the person's name. So when I do a new page, I'll be like like this today was episode 167. Link 80, and then Matt, and the guy actually I interviewed today, he's the director of the new Scream movie, which is pretty cool.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So
his name is very relevant nowadays. So I put in the show notes Scream movie. So now that's being shot out into the internet. If someone's looking for these things, it might go back to my website. So that, and then I think that's it. And then everything else is free. I mean, Instagram, Facebook, set those pages up. Yeah, those are the technical things.
And that's a really good point with SEO too. That's kind of why I explored more the route of video casting for YouTube, because I can put the descriptions in YouTube, which from my knowledge, as far as social networks, they're not really SEO driven. So you're not really finding a lot of the content that we post on Facebook and things like that if you're just Googling something. Whereas YouTube does give you that opportunity. But I think it was a really smart move to include that on your, like a website or something like that, because you have some copy that will drive into that, and using those keywords is great.
Yeah. And another benefit to that too is that I give them their own landing page, which helps the SEO. But on that landing page, I can put my web store. So that's another thing that I have. I use Printful prints on demand. And then I have WooCommerce, which is a plugin for my website. I also know how to design. So when I design, my web store is connected to Printful. So Printful, I don't have to buy 100 shirts. It'll just print one. And
that's so nice.
It's great. I could do shirts. You could do coffee mugs, pillows. I mean, a lot of stuff, like no one really wants that this was the scene pillow, but you have to find, you have to find your voice. So like I just did one that's very Jersey related. It was like, it's Taylor Ham, you, and it's just like, a very bad word. Because it's just a very Jersey thing, even though the podcast has now expanded outside of Jersey.
Yeah.
But that's another way you could save money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And WooCommerce is free. It's a free plugin. It's a little wonky, but I mean, it does its thing.
Have you heard of Patreon? That's another one. I'm gonna write that down. Patreon.
Patreon's good. Yeah.
Have you heard of Descript?
I just stumbled upon that, and it's
Descript.
I haven't used it yet, but what I saw of it, it looks like the greatest thing ever.
I mean, if this is what I'm seeing, this might be. I might have to check this out too. I like StreamYard.
But the only thing, because that takes out, it edits it edits your audio for you, and it transcribes it. But here's the thing, though.
Transcriptions.
When I'm editing 2 tracks, right? When I cut something here, this track might be going across this way, but if I cut it here, there's a tool, it's Ripple Delete in Premiere. So basically, like, I'm trying to think of like the way this is showing on the screen. So like if here's the beginning and here's the full cut and both tracks are aligned, right? So now it's aligned because if I shift one, now the conversation is delayed. It's all weird, right? So you can't mess with that. With the script, I'm wondering how they do that where I want to cut myself out. Mm-hmm. So they're treating it as one file. So if I'm talking over my guest and they're talking, but I want them to stop saying but I'm also saying something that makes sense. I don't know in Descript if they can chop it where it's going to sound right and not mess up the audio. Like I would want to upload the one track of my guest talking. Yeah. But if I laid that into my editing software, timeline, the entire thing would be off.
Is that like you're talking about like is that called an L edit?
What do you mean?
As far as I'm thinking about timelines and like, in Final Cut or Premiere Pro where you're trying to have the audio go underneath but not shift how the audio visual connects.
So I don't have visual in mind. That's
okay, that's right.
This is even more time consuming if you were going to download this and edit it because it's just and it's a lot more file size too. So that's why I don't do video. I also like when I'm interviewing the guests because when I'm interviewing them and they're telling a story, I'm looking up into space and like really because they're talking about a story from 20 years ago and I'm like enjoying it, but I'm also thinking of the next thing. If I had to stare them in the eye the whole time, I don't think I would have that opportunity to like go, yeah, okay, cool. And then I'm like looking out in my window and thinking of that time. And then they would just be looking at me like, are you paying attention? It's like, no, I am paying attention. I'm just trying to think about what to say next and listen to what you're saying.
You see what I just did here though?
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, you can zoom in and out and then you're kind of hidden. But I think that people too, like I really didn't look at myself a lot this whole time because I'm also looking at like my wall and around because there's something about like, my brain process too. It's like, I'm thinking that. And I think if I'm showing them the whole time when they're talking about something super personal, it might throw them off. So there's just something about this just voice that you hear. And it's a bit more intimate for some reason. Like not saying this isn't, but like, there's something about when they're telling about this time period in their life. It's like a different thing. So it works better that way, but
that's fair. That's fair. Well, you gave me a few pretty cool different pieces of software to research. And hopefully we provided some folks and viewers some cool ideas on getting started and why business is business, why podcasting can be great for business. Yeah. A great lead gen tool. And, you never know where it's going to land. I think one of the other things you mentioned is you can start a podcast and start a marketing initiative, but you never know if it's going to hit that day, next week, 2 years from now. And I think that's the beauty of brand awareness is, you want to get inside someone's head and make sure that they remember you when you're needed. And I think podcasting is a good way to do that from a personality standpoint.
Yeah. And I think the most successful ones are very niche down. Yeah. Depending on, I think they work. You can have actors and actresses talk about whatever, but the thing that's niche down, it's that they already have a built-in audience because they want to hear what they have to say. So they can talk about whatever the hell they want. But if you are someone that no one knows, you got to think of like, why are they going to give me my time? So it's that balance, right? It's what am I making? Do I love what I'm making? Here's what I'm making. Here's an audience.
Yeah.
Do I love it? Do they want it? No. Do they love it and I don't want to make it? That's not going to work. But that Venn diagram is right in the middle. Like, I love making it. They want it.
Yep.
So you got to find that. And there's a billion different coats of paint you could put on that. But I mean, it is time consuming, man. It is.
Oh, the thought of editing. That's why I get a little spoiled with StreamYard, where I'm like, it reminds me a lot of broadcasting, like broadcast software, where it's like screen 2, take screen 1, and then you're like double screen, full screen this, and we got your video clips, background, etc. But obviously not sponsored.
Yeah.
But I think this is going to be a good episode, and I already have some people in mind that I want to share this with. So thank you for offering your expertise, and definitely recommend folks head to drive80.com, check out some of Mike's awesome animations if you're looking for animations for your business. And Daily Bread, you have Instagram and Facebook for Daily Bread. That's where you get stickers and t-shirts and
Instagram's the main one.
Okay.
Facebook is just what's being pushed on Instagram is being pushed on Facebook. So
I feel you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and then too, if you're into the punk scene from the late 90s, early 2000s from New Jersey, check out This Was the Scene.
It's not just New Jersey anymore, but that's how the root. Now it's like all the bands that influenced us. But This Was the Scene.
You had to open that niche up a little bit.
Yeah, it was. It still goes back to who influenced us, but the beginning was just purely Jersey. But This Was the Scene, and it's doing really well. So I'm pretty stoked on it.
I dig it. All right, Mike. Well, thanks for joining us. We'll chat soon.
Yeah, thanks for